What's up, my ninjas? I'm Strident, and a couple days ago, this happened. The new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie came out, and most people seem to hate it. I haven't watched it yet, and this video is only partially about this. It's more so about something that I've seen happen with every modern take on something from days gone by in recent years. It's strange, and in some cases it's kind of embarrassing. And I figured I'm gonna point this out, and I want to see. I'm prepared because we get this anyway, but I'm prepared for the backlash. But I want to point out this issue, and the issue is really simple, and it has to do with perception. No matter how far from the source material the current take is, you always have people that convince themselves that there's nothing wrong with it. Now, under the auspice that the changes that are made are actually understandable and good, and they make sense, and they fit, you know, and they you don't lose what makes whatever the subject is the subject once these changes are made, you know, provided that's the case. I wouldn't have an issue, and I won't, and I'll defend, and I'll, you know, and most of us, you know, the critics that do pretty thoughtful analysis, we will back the design, the writing, the story, whatever. But, you know, in some cases, like with this, there's a lot of things from just starting off with the visual that I'm so surprised and amazed that so many people want to defend and say that there's nothing wrong with what they're looking at. Nothing at all. It just boggles my mind, you know? And I want to dissect this a little bit. And I'm going to use the Turtles as the subject because they're the newest thing that's going to be in the front of people's minds. All the fanboys, fangirls, all the fanatics, all those who don't have the ability to objectively, you know, critique or just look at something objectively and say the truth based on what's sitting right the fuck in front of you. They're going to all attack me because they've done it already with other, you know, really well done, very well thought out and concise reviews of the film. They've already attacked those people just because the critic didn't agree with them. So I'm prepared. You know, this is kind of what made me even want to look at this the way that I'm about to look at it. And, you know, when I say that I'm about to look at it in a different kind of way, it's just critical, you know. I haven't seen the movie. I already know from looking at it it's bad. I mean, if they didn't take the time to actually come up with personalities with the characters, just like they did with Transformers, if you look at the designs, this is a telltale sign of a bad character design. If you look at a character in a movie and the character has all this flair on their person, it's because in the film, their personality is not going to be explored. They don't want to focus on the personality or the development of that character. They're a caricature. They're a stereotype. They're going to look a certain way, which conveys everything to the audience. But then while in the actual story, in the body of work itself, they're going to have little to no personality or nothing that would expose that personality to the viewers. I mean, that's why Donatello is a full-on nerd with every piece of hardware they could throw on him. You know, that's why he's got glasses. That's why he's got the headset. That's why he's got his fucking Xbox or whatever the fuck that is on his back. You know, his computer and his Xbox. It's just all a caricature. That's why Raphael is stupid huge and dark-looking and mean-looking, you know, because not only is he a snapping turtle, he's also supposed to be, you know, he's a mutant ninja snapping turtle who's brooding and, you know, just angsty for the sake of being so. And look at his design. He just looks like a brute. There's no, that's the personality that they're throwing at us. Leonardo looks like the most ninja-like, I'm sorry, of the bunch, but you can't tell anything else about him. His face is practically expressionless. I don't know. And then Michelangelo just looks like an idiot. Which is, it says something about the characterization. It's like the bro version, the dude bro version of the Ninja Turtles. And what's funny is that Michelangelo always had that the closest to the dude bro isms because of the whole surfer thing, and that's not what they capitalized on. But one thing I'll highlight, Movie Bob did a really concise review of the film, and he got attacked. I was reading the comments. He always gets attacked when he doesn't agree with the populace. And I'm reading the comments, and people were attacking him, and he closed the comments. This was earlier today when it went up, or yesterday when it went up. This is the norm. It's like you have to be part of the majority, or you're the enemy. And it's like there's no in between. You can't have a varying, you can't, intelligently explain why you do not agree with something. You have to go with the flow. You have to bandwagon, because if you don't, automatically you're a hater. And it's getting old. It's embarrassing. It's so immature that it's just embarrassing. These don't even look like the Ninja Turtles. They don't. The fact this look kind of gives you an idea of what the movie is about. The movie is no longer about ninjas. And it's blatantly obvious. But all these people, and like I said, it's the same individuals that made Transformers, 1, 2, 3, and 4 all together make billions of dollars. This it doesn't resemble the Nick show. It just doesn't resemble anything related to the Turtles. It actually, I have to take that back. It more so resembles the Next Mutation, and which I would take the Next Mutation over this. But it resembles the Next Mutation and the Japanese Ninja Turtles show more so than any other version of the Turtles. And those are two of the ones that people just are like, meh. You know what I mean? They don't really regard those as works of art or quality or canon, or it's just not part of it. Now, I'm pointing these things out because I grew up with the Turtles. They're among the first things that I really learned how to draw when I was a kid. And I've watched every incarnation, because the thing that was missing from the cartoon version I grew up with, after the first 5 episodes, there was like no fighting, They weren't really ninjas like what the series told you they would be. So I was expecting as we get further and further and further along, we would get more of that. And we have. It's just that here, I don't like what I see. Now, some people grew up with the Turtles looking like this in the original cartoon. In the 2000s, we had this version. In, later 2000s, we got the CG film, which they look like this. Now, the Turtles look like this on TV. We had games where they redesigned the Turtles a little bit. And then there was always the movies. Now, the movies, when you look at those Turtles, you say what you will about the fact that that those are people in costumes. Say what you will about that, because it seems like because you know how they did it, and it took place in the 90s, it gives today's critics and today's, bros and today's, fake-ass elitist wannabe intellectuals and, fake reviewers or whatever. It's like it gives them pride to diss it because of when it came about and how it came about. But looking at that and looking at everything else I just showed you, they still look official. They still look like the source material. If anything, it's the closest to real life that the source material has ever looked. I will repeatedly say that the first movie, even with the problems they had with the suits and everything, these versions of the Turtles look the best out of all the films that we've gotten so far, even this dumbass CG shit that we got now. The problem with today's version is the same thing that you're seeing in a lot of games. A lot of game design has this habit of, especially the games that have been around for a long time, they have this habit of just packing shit onto characters, Like now, because games are, fully realized three-dimensional characters in a 2.5D space sometimes. Most times, because none of our fighting games, I'll use fighting games as an example because they're mostly character-based. Most of those do not have character designs, most of them, that you just upgrade what worked with the character to begin with, as opposed to just packing the items onto them. Tekken, when you make your own character, that's the way it works. You just pack shit on to your character. When you look at some of the designs, it's just texture and, layer of clothing on top of layer of clothing and texture upon texture and material upon material. Soul Calibur is the infamous version, or, series that it's the most prevalent. Characters went from having clothes that you could fight in to having shit just piled up on top of the design. And that's supposed to equate a better design as opposed to, functionality in the design. They are fighting, you know what I'm saying? So there is a goal and there is something they have to do. The same goes, for, the Turtles. Every other version I showed you over the last, 30 years, the Turtles have, or 25, I think it's 30. Whatever. 25, actually, because it's 90 to now. There is a functionality behind the design. They were small, they were, kind of muscular because they did fight, so they're working out all the time, but they weren't overdone. They didn't have too much shit on them that would make noise. They're ninjas. They look uniformed because they're a clan. That's even a big part of the actual mythos. It's a part of the core story of the Turtles. They're a family. They're a clan. So therefore they represent like a clan. It's not like the X-Men where all of them come from parts unknown and they're kind of becoming a surrogate family, but they don't necessarily feel like that off the bat, so it reflects in each design. There's a lot of individuality in the X-Men, but when you look at these guys, there's no way you can say that what you saw before and this are the same thing. It just is fucking impossible. You know what I mean? Aside from colors, nothing on them resembles the source. Every version, first the cartoon versions to the CG and live action versions to video game versions, they got it right. And then this shit comes along and they try to do their own thing in the worst way possible. If you're going to redo, redesign, reimagine, you still have to keep the integrity of the original design enough that anyone looking at them can say, oh, that is, so-and-so, or that is the new version of so-and-so. I can tell because he has all this stuff in common with the original design. That's just the way it goes. You can't completely overhaul and leave a couple things, like they're green, they have shells, and then they have their masks on, however those things translate, and then try to convince us, oh, it's the same exact thing as what you've been seeing for the last 20 some odd years, almost 30 years. Come on. Every single film, every single version of Captain America that you've seen in every single film drew from the inspiration and the concept and the design of the original Captain America. You saw that first suit that you only see in the stage play portions of the film. Now you see his first Avenger costume. Now you see the Avengers uniform. It's getting further and further away from the original, pieces that you saw, the exact original pieces, the fireman boots and gloves and then the tights, but the form is still there, the colors are still there, the pieces are still there, and they all draw from this original fucking design. So much so that little kids can look at him, and even though he doesn't have the wings popping off the top of his head, they're still prevalent on the helmet. Even though he doesn't have the big old fireman boots and fireman gloves and all that shit, you can still tell because the stars and stripes are still there and the colors are placed in the right position. It's keeping the integrity of the original design, something that what we're looking at here, it doesn't do. You know what I mean? Apart from the masks, it doesn't do it. Now, I understand some people say, you know, personality-wise, some of that stuff is still there, but it's not enough of the personality that actually made these characters popular for us to say, you know, okay, this is effective. You know what I mean? And I'm going to have a review for you where I can go into detail about that also. But so many people have done it for me, I almost don't feel the need to even have to do it. I mean, this speaks for itself. And I don't understand how much more clear it needs to be made for you. Now, it's different if you're trying to say that you just enjoy what this is, what this particular version is bringing for you. If you enjoy these sensibilities, that's personal. And if that's the case, you know, then cool, that's you. But you can't say that this, you know, this right here, I mean, that looks like the cartoon in live action. You can't say that looks like this. No. There's just no way that you can try and say that the two things are the same. We had the same issue with the X-Men films. All too often did they go about changing things that didn't need to be changed because this is the very core of the character. You know, comics are a visual medium and you need to be able to see the character for who they are. It's not just the actor and it's not just the performance. It is the look of the character as well as the performance and all the other stuff. That's what makes them who they are. For so many people to say, you know, forego all that shit and I'm just going to accept it wholeheartedly just because you don't get that you're being shortchanged. I mean, I'm going to use Marvel again as an example. I'm not even going to put up pictures, but we're just going to talk about Marvel. If you notice, every single Marvel film that they've made, the changes that they've made to the characters visually are so minimal. They're so minimal, and so much of what made those characters who they are visually is celebrated. It's insane. I mean, it literally is one of those things where you're just like, wow, how did they do this? And it's the epitome of what you're supposed to do. You go back and you look at the first 1990s Ninja Turtles film, and then look at the animated characters or the cartoon versions or the comic version. Wow, cartoon and animated, same thing. Comic versions, I mean. You look at those guys, you can see all they did was look at what was on the page and what was, you know, moving on screen in animation and said, how can we make this more realistic? They didn't cop out and put bodybuilder physiques on the Ninja Turtles and then add a giant shell that they can't fit in. I mean, that shell looks like it's about to fall off. And then give them practically human faces. I mean, get the fuck out of here. They did the same shit to the Transformers, and people just accepted it because supposedly everything they want in a summer blockbuster is there, even though those movies are poorly written, poorly acted, poorly executed, everything. They're poorly thought out, the whole nine. It's just a lot of eye candy in there, and I won't even say, I can't really say eye candy because the Transformers themselves look ugly as fuck. I mean, if the Decepticons look like that, it'd be fitting. But the Autobots need to look a little bit better, and they don't. And it just, the fact that if you don't agree, you know, and I'm repeating myself, I know I am, but that's the point of this whole thing, is to drive the point home. You can see the lack of understanding of the subject matter just based on their design. It's on a topical level. I want gritty, realistic designs. Okay, we'll take what Dave Raposa has done here. He took the exact form and shape of the turtles, and he added little things within that silhouette, essentially, within that shape, within that framework. Granted, you can't see their whole bodies, but do you really need to at this point to know that you're going to get bodies that look pretty, close or pretty, you know, on point to what they're supposed to look like, you know? You can clearly see dude likes the turtles. He enjoys drawing them. You can see that he understands what makes them work. He understands what a turtle looks like. They still have their beaks. You know, he even added noses, and they don't look all hideous and they don't look like Shrek. They just look tough. The personalities are there. Raph looks crazy. Leonardo looks determined. Michelangelo looks like he's enjoying himself. And Donatello looks contemplative. Come on, I mean, like, that's the way it works. The characters have very distinct personalities. By this point, they're even almost archetypical. You know what I'm saying? And the people making this film don't get it. And you guys want to attack those who do get it and are pointing out that this is what's lacking. It's just stupid. If you don't see it, you don't see it. Let's not engage in the back and forth. You take it for what you want to take it for. You enjoy it. Let those who see what it's supposed to be and see what's lacking, let us have our conversation. Don't act like we have an issue because you have an issue. You know? That's the part that gets old. That's the part that's embarrassing, you know? They did it with Amazing Spider-Man, the first one. They did it with all the X-Men movies. Even not one of those movies looks like X-Men. They could have named it Mutant X, the movie, and made new characters with those same actors, same costumes, everything. And it could have still survived. They could have still got praise if that's what you want to do. It would have still been the same film. The fact that the name Wolverine, Storm, Professor X, all that shit was in there is what drew people into the theater, because we know who those characters are. This right here is an example of someone knowing the subject and being able to translate the subject matter. You know what I mean? What we got a couple days ago, this new one, is not. I don't care if the fight scenes are good, because some people have said that the fight scenes are good and they're staged well and blah blah blah. Whatever. They should be. They spent enough fucking money on it. You know? Like I said before, fights were the one thing lacking from the original Ninja Turtle films. And even the original Ninja Turtle cartoon. The fights were always weird. They were always cracking jokes, and it was always comical how they were knocking people out when they weren't killing and fighting these ninjas the way they did in the comics. In the comics, they were brutal and they were efficient. And that's what ninjas are supposed to be like. And these ninjas were not like that. And I've always wanted to see that. You know, imagine an R-rated cut of the 90s Ninja Turtles movie with alternate choreography, like Hong Kong style choreography. That would have been amazing. That's all I'm asking for, like that Casey Jones short. That's what we need, you know? But that's not what we've gotten yet, because no one has the balls to listen, and Kevin Eastman is kind of a sellout when it comes to that. He's all about the money. That's why he didn't care. You know, Peter Laird's a little different. But here's another example. These are the movie star turtles, right? These are from back in the day. These are repainted. I think they have like black, they looks like they have black dry brushing on them. And their bands have been painted brown, except for the ones on their faces. But the basic paint job that you're looking at, I think he took off whoever this artist is, and I forgot his name, and I apologize for that. I was kind of flying through finding examples of my point, but he took the spots off of them, and still, these are the original ones from 1990. They look more like the movie than these ones over here. It just doesn't make sense. You know, today with all the tech that we have, with the paints, with everything we have, how does this pass for this? And then people are so gaga because there's articulation and blah, blah, blah. But the basic figure, the look of the figure, what they're supposed to do, they got the body type right. Spend some money and paint the motherfuckers, but they don't do that. Instead, the old ones look more the part. They lack the articulation, but they did the job. And the new ones don't. You know, this is the same lack of attention that I'm talking about that today's quote-unquote fans and moviegoers and reviewers and whatever, they have this issue. It's very simple. You just take things as they are. You freaking look at things objectively, and that's when you give us your opinion. You can't tell me that looks as good, as clean, as striking, as memorable as all the previous things that I've just shown you. You know, and even worse is that we have the internet these days, and you still have people arguing the point. Now, like I said, if personally that you feel that it's good, cool. If it works for you, cool, but don't sit here and try to force me to change my mind or try to belittle me simply because, you know, and I'm not saying just me, people who don't necessarily feel the same way. We'll sit there and try to belittle them because they don't agree and they have factual information to, you know, help drive their point home. That's the whole point of being a reviewer. If you don't understand that, then it's a good thing you're not a reviewer. There's a reason why some of us get up and say what we say. There's a reason why we can do it. You know what I mean? There's a reason why people will listen to us sometimes when we do this, or most of the time when we do this, because we are objectively saying what we're saying. Notice, I haven't told you whether or not I love the old school Turtles so much or I hate them. I haven't even mentioned which version is my favorite, you know? But this isn't a nostalgia thing, and I'm tired of hearing that really devious, and this is why I named it arguing deviously. I don't want to, I'm tired of hearing the devious argument that we're seeing things through nostalgia-colored glasses. It's bullshit. You know? When you compare all the other generations of the Turtles, all the other iterations, they still kept the main things that made the Turtles who they are. And, you know, they just changed the voices, or they changed, you know, aspects of the story. They didn't go and change the basic look of the Turtles to the point where you can't, they don't register as the same things. I mean, these guys look more like villains that would have been in Ninja Turtles, or like side characters, than they do the freaking titular main characters. And that proves they missed it. They don't look like teenagers. They don't look like ninjas at first glance. There's nothing about them that says clan. They don't look the same. You know what I'm saying? They don't look like a ninja clan, like a makeshift kind of ghetto ninja clan. You know what I mean? They don't. And here's even more to throw all the knowledge in place. They were small in the first place because ninjas typically are people of small stature. They weren't hulking characters because it would be boring to watch a super huge hulking physique having monster use ninjutsu on a regular person. What's the point, and where's the fun in that? Yeah, the Turtles could have been stronger, but the point was they took on human characteristics. They didn't become overly humanized to the umpteenth degree. They had personalities, they had struggles, they weren't just immediately more powerful than those that they could fight. Looking at this is that bullshit that I'm talking about with this real and gritty fixation that this time period happens to have. Moviegoers and fans of everything comic that existed before you guys figured out that this shit was here, you want everything to be realistic and gritty. You can't just let things be escapist flair. You can't just escape with something. You can't use your imagination. It always has to be quote-unquote realistic and gritty. As you can see, that is not a formula that has a place here. It's the same thing with a lot of other things. X-Men is one of them. There's no gritty realism with X-Men because it wasn't a gritty realistic story. And if you're going to go gritty realistic, you got to remember the things that make it what it is. It's an allegory for freaking, or metaphor, I'm sorry, for civil rights movement. If you're not going to put that in there, then do a different story and call it something else. Stan Lee himself said that's what he was doing. And you make a whole movie that takes place during that era and you focus on the fucking Cuban Missile Crisis, the fuck is wrong with you? It's the same logic goes here, you know? If you're going to make these characters examples of kind of the downtrodden, examples of the part of our culture that kind of has to struggle to find its place. I mean, that's kind of what they embody, because that's usually what teenagers are doing. Being a teenager is a time period when you figure out where you fit in the grand scheme of things. What kind of a person are you going to grow up to be? That's when it's all solidified. You're seeing that with these characters, even in the 90s. You were seeing that. Raph was angry about things because a lot of things were outside of his control. You understood it there. It wasn't that he was just a dick like in a lot of the other versions of this story since then. Even in the comics, he understood he's part of a team. He didn't always fly off at the handle. Shit, a lot of the shit they made happen to Raph happened to Leo, because Leo was always trying to prove himself, because he felt he was an inadequate leader. These are struggles that anybody who's ever been in any kind of situation, anyone who's part of a family, if you're the oldest in the family, you're usually required to be the example for the younger ones. What if you can't be an example? What if you don't know? What if you don't understand it? What if you're busy trying to figure out what that means? You're going to make mistakes. There you go. All that shit is relatable. You don't need to do anything else to these characters to make them relatable. Yet, time and again, that's what we see. They go out of their way to do things to quote-unquote make them more relatable, and in reality, you've completely shat on something that was already worthwhile, already done well. Characterization's already been done for you so many times that by now it should be understandable, you know? One of them has anger issues. You know, it's aggressive. Another one is the overachiever. Another one is straight up awkward with most stuff, but brilliant with, you know, fixing things and building things from a technical standpoint. And then the other one is just carefree, devil may care attitude, doesn't give a shit. He's just living life the way it is because he realizes he's got gifts. He realizes he's not the same as everybody else, and he loves it. Plain and simple. Yet somehow these guys didn't see that. And then there's a whole bunch of you guys who are going to bitch at us for saying they don't look cool, they look stupid, they're ugly as fuck. I mean, remember, we got to sit there and look at this for an hour and a half, 2 hours. At least make them look somewhat like the heroes. So, yeah. The nostalgia thing doesn't hold water at all. You know, this is us being realistic and you guys being tolerant for the sake of being tolerant. You don't have to. You know, Michael Bay said, we can complain all we want, but we're going to pay to see this. I'm not, and I don't think you guys should either. If that's the mentality of the guys creating this shit, you shouldn't be surprised at the end result. So, anyway, I'm done ranting. It's been a long enough video. Stay tuned for the review coming up soon, and peace outside.